Hi, everybody. I'm Suzanne.
And I'm Lindsay.
Welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where our goal is to help you engage your faith outside of Sunday. Today, we're having a very special conversation about community, and joining us is our friend Chris Payne. Chris, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
Glad you're here.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yep. So glad to have you with us. So we want to just have a conversation about this topic of community. It's a big one for the church. It's a big one for all of us. It's part of our journey, and our faith journey is with others and the people that are in the journey with us. Chris, what would you say is your definition of community?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Great topic. Well, you used a word there that I would start with, which is journey. And, really from a spiritual perspective, a journey to and with Jesus. And community, I think the best definition using that word is the friends that you're on a journey with. So just to keep it simple, friends on a journey.
I like that.
Yeah,
Friends.
the friends on a journey. Lindsay, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think when I think of community, I think of belonging. So it's a place or a people where you belong. And I think too, I feel like we've talked about this before, but I feel like having a community is people who see differently than you, and they tell you the truth. So tell you the truth about yourself, tell you the truth about God, and tell you the truth about them as well. And so I think belonging is huge for me. So I think just confess right out the gate. It's like sometimes I can wear just different masks and I can hide myself or be different around different groups. But when I think about my safe space and community, it's like, oh, this is where I belong and this is where I can authentically be myself. But I love journey because that's a movement, right? It's like you're belonging and you're walking with these people.
Yes.
I love that kind of action.
You're going somewhere.
So, you're going somewhere. I love that.
And I think, I think when I think about community, they're the people that you said it, they're your people. And there are seasons that I'm with my people, and there have been seasons when ministry is and life is feels more separated. So those are harder seasons for me. When I'm with people and in life with people, life seems to be smoother. Even though the journey may be hard, being with the people is really important.
Yes.
And I love that you used to use the word friend. As simple as that, community is friends. And that's the language we've started to use at Matthew's location with our hospitality team is people, when they show up, when they walk through the doors, they want to know they're going to meet a friend.
Yes.
And they want to make a friend. And so everybody wants a friend, and so using that language, because it's community. Yes. What is that? That feels complex in some ways, but it's friendship. Everybody wants a friend.
Yeah.
So.
And I found myself when I connect with people, I found myself saying, I want to be a friend on the journey.
I love that.
And just, and then we'll talk about this kind of, you can kind of slot people in different places in that. But I think just being a person who's on the way with them is important. And then, of course, as you said, belonging and knowing people that you belong with a group on the way as well. I think about the story of Jesus when he was a child. We don't know all the things, but he got lost. He got separated from his mom and dad. But he wasn't separated from the community.
Yeah, that's good.
So he wasn't in physical proximity with them, but they were in a caravan on a journey, and he was still okay. The community was looking after him, and they were reunited.
That's really good.
What comes to my mind is the story of there are countries where little kids can ride the major transportation, and people look out for the kids. That's a different thing than in our culture.
Totally.
But it's that kind of community. You value the people around you, and you look out for them.
Yes.
So I love that. A little bit of how in your journey, how has community impacted you in this in your faith journey?
Yeah. So I would say I was thinking about some prayers that if you think about prayers that you've prayed for a long time, which is an interesting exercise to think, what are prayers that I've been praying for a long time? And one of those prayers is, Lord, give me a vision for my future and a people to share it with. I've prayed that prayer for a long time, and I pray that prayer for our kids and for a lot of people. And as I thought about your question, it really is what you're praying for is a way, a way to journey towards Jesus, a vision for how you're meant to journey. And then a people, a community to belong to and to share it with. And I think, in different seasons of your life, that community looks different. So I would just say it's not the same people. So some of my learnings in that are there are people that are there for a part of the journey, and then people that have been there from the beginning, and then people that enter into the journey that you don't know now, but enter in for a certain part. If we think about narratives, like a character that enters into the story to help you in this part of the journey, and kind of walk with you. And obviously we play that role with each other.
To me, that brings to mind, there have been different people in the different seasons that there were, when you make a move and you make a move, you've made moves in ministry. We've made moves in ministry. Like, there are different people that God puts in your path, and they're there with you for that season, and you do life together, and it's rich and deep. And then something changes, and they move, or you move, or the seasons change, and it's still a healthy thing. It's just they had to move on.
Yes.
Or you had to move on. You had to be obedient to what God was calling you to. And different seasons require different people in our journey. And I don't know that we accept that really well.
No, we don't. No. Why do you think we don't?
Well, I think it's hard. I think it's hard to say goodbye. I think it's hard. We don't like change. I mean, I'm okay with some change, but there's certain change I don't want. And sometimes that's the people. And sometimes it's exactly what God wants. Is for the people to change around me.
That's hard for me because I'm like so loyal. Like loyalty is like a top value of mine. And I think loyalty is great. But I think there are times when it's clouded my discernment on like when seasons have ended with friends, because I'm like, I love you, I love my people, I'm loyal to you, and it's become my primary value, instead of like taking a step back and being like, oh, this season's over, like we have different values or whatever. So I would say loyalty is why it's hard for me. So and change too. I don't always love change. But I've been able to name, I'm like, my loyalty, which is good, kind of gets in the way of seeing that. So
and we can just get attached, to not only the person, but what they're giving to us, or to be candid, sometimes an unhealthy attachment that they're affirming a behavior or something in us that we've kind of made this unspoken agreement that I won't ask you about these things if you don't ask me about these things in my life. And so I think, one of the things we talk about a lot is, we collect relationships, we collect people, meaning like you can keep your friends, but you're always open to new relationships and new friends, and people have to find their, spot in that. So some people come closer for a season, and then they can't be as close in a season. And that's not, I don't think that's selfish. I think, a teaching around this, honestly, to think about it, like scripturally, is like in the Old Testament, in the temple, there were different sections. And I heard a teaching on this when relationships, like, cause there was like there was the Holy of Holies, like where only the priest could go in once a year and commune, and sacrifice before God. And then there was the holy place that was kind of one layer out. And then there was, the court of the Jews and the court of the Gentiles and the outer courts. And there was like 5 or 6 different layers. And I think that's an interesting little template to put relationships in, where people can be in your relational world. You can be, to our definition, friends on a journey together. But sometimes like, people are in a holier place, a closer place to you. And then sometimes they need to be, like when you said, like, for whatever reason, like there needs to be some boundaries drawn, and actually I can't share this part of my life with you. And I would just say, part of what I've learned along the way with community is, like, there are high wall people and low wall people, meaning there are high wall people on the outside where it's really hard to get in, but then once you get in, like you're in forever. Right. And then there's low wall people where everybody's their friend, but it turns out at some point you hit a wall and everybody's their best friend until it gets real, and then then they don't have any friends, and I think that we're probably somewhere on that spectrum. That'd be an interesting question for all of us to ask ourselves. Is my high wall up close, or is it out here? But I think the reality is, like, people need to find their place in your relational world, and you have to have volition in that, like, to be able to have discernment that not everybody needs to know everything about you. That there are holy places in your life that probably 3 or 4 people need to know about. There's some places that only the Lord knows about. There's some places where, maybe it's 10, 15 people in your community group, or what have you. And then there's other places where, like, we're friends, but we're not journeying at an intimate level, like where I'm sharing the most intimate parts of my life. And I think that's just discernment, and it's actually a grace to the people in your life that, it's too much for them to bear. And there's only certain people that can be in that holy of holy place.
So I think you've just hit on something that's really important when it comes to friendship and community and being with people. And that is that there are different degrees that we have and that we have space for and grace for. And there's it's messy. And so, and it's work.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we have this anticipation that I'm here, I have community. But yet it takes time.
Yes.
It takes investment. It is something that if you value, you have to continue to pursue. And sometimes I run into people and they're like, well, I should just have it. And I'm like, I wish I could push a button and give you community, but it's the investment of your time and energy and yourself.
Yes.
And those are hard things.
Very hard.
So what's an encouragement for somebody who is like struggling to get into community? What's something you would say to somebody who says, I don't have friends. Like, how do I, like, what do I pursue?
Well, this is kind of, like parent stuff, but I mean, I think this is some really good advice. If you want a friend, you got to be a friend.
Yes.
And so I think, finding people that are in your relational world, in your circle, coworkers, friends. By the way, sometimes family members can be your friends.
That's good.
And we don't think about that a lot, but because sometimes, we're in proximity with family members and we wouldn't be in relationship with them if they weren't our family members. But sometimes you can have a cousin or a niece or nephew or, whatever, and be a really good friend to them. So I just would think about like your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, in your church community, and think about people that, man, I really want to pursue a relationship with them and be the pursuer. Whether it's, hey, let's watch a game together. Let's go have coffee together. Let's go for a walk. Find something that you can do together.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a follow-up question. Is it harder for men to have friends than for women? This was not on our notes, but
I don't know. I can only speak as a man. I would say, there's a lot of studies out there that I think that are fairly well published and known of how hard it is for men to find other close friends. So I do think that women tend to be more relational beings and pursue relationships and cultivate, use that word, like cultivating relationship, where guys tend to be more, I'm just going to do things and be more task driven and provide, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think it's more difficult. But I also think all of us were made to be in relationship. And so it's innate to us to do it. And I think a lot of times our work, whatever, just guys, is a cover, to not be vulnerable with someone else.
That's good.
And you don't need to be vulnerable with everybody. That's the thing.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to come back though to when you were talking about kind of people in the inner circle or the Holy of Holies and then kind of expanding out.
Yeah.
I would love just to unpack that a little bit. It's how do you discern who's in that, Holy of Holies or the inner circle is kind of language I use. Because I think I went through a time period where I was would share just with people. I wanted to be open with people and I was just too vulnerable and didn't really understand that there are levels in friendships. And then I went through a period too where I was I don't know if y'all feel this way, but I was pouring out just so much, and I would just get together with people and it would just feel like I was catching up.
Yeah.
And and you're going to dinner and you're just catching up with friends and it's just exhausting. You kind of leave and you're oh, I just feel like I have to recount the last 6 weeks of my life or last 3 months of my life versus being with people and just being together, and in that belonging space and without feeling like I gotta remember or just tell you everything that's going on, versus let me just kind of be my authentic self and we can just kind of exist in the same space. So I'm kind of learning okay, that's what the inner circle is, but I don't even know if there's a question in there, but how do you kind of discern who's in that space?
Yeah. And you guys jump in too.
Yeah.
But I would say, pay attention to how you feel after you're with them.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's not, I think we have to resist moralizing this, it's good or bad or they're good or bad. Feelings oftentimes aren't right or wrong. They just are. And so just paying attention to how did I feel when we finished our dinner? Did I feel alive? Did I feel like I was my true self? Did I feel like there was a good give and take, because
good.
part of that inner circle, there has to be an equal give and take.
Yeah.
It's not always 50-50.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone's going through something and it's 80-20.
Yeah.
But over the arc of the relationship, there needs to be a give and take. And
Yeah.
the truth is that there's a lot of relationships where we're giving, but we're not able to receive. And so I think finding relationships that are life-giving, and that's not selfish.
Right.
Just recognizing that I can be friends with someone and be in relationship with someone, but they're not necessarily a fill up the cup type relationship for me. So I have to be able to limit my time and be kind to myself in that. So I would just, that's the
good.
number one thing for
That's
me
good.
is like, how do
Yeah.
you, when you're with them, like, how do you
feel?
Are you posturing? Are you your true self? Do you have to, are you scripted?
Yes.
Are you
Yep.
thinking about how they're receiving what I'm saying? Because all these are indicators of
Yes.
intimacy, trust, all the things that build great
Yeah.
relationships. And I think just a lot of times, those close friendships, whether it's 2 or 3 people, come out of the broader group. So whether you're in a community group
It's good.
or your coworkers or just the broader groups that you travel in, you're finding those people that like we just click. And, C.S. Lewis said, the beginning of close friendship is when you say, oh, you too. So you're in a setting, you go, oh, you feel that way too, or you went through something like that too. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, it's good.
I think there's so much to when you feel like you can be with somebody and you can just be with them. Like you can have a conversation, and there are the lulls in conversation, and you're comfortable when there's a lull.
Yeah.
And there are people that you talk so much when you're with them, but yet you come to a point in the conversation that it's shifting, and you're okay in the quiet.
Yeah.
And that has been, for me, like the friends that it's okay for us to we're actually just sitting here together.
Yeah.
And it's just good to be together.
Totally.
And that's a gift.
That's
Like that is
totally
not a
right.
common thing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't come.
Yes. And when you find those
Quickly.
people, you got to hold on to them.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
As best you can. And we talked about like people, friends on the journey, in different seasons. Like I do think there are seasons, that people come in and out of your life. And, we talked, there's 3 kind of different types of relationships or friendships, friends for a reason, friends for a season, and friends for life.
Yes.
And the reality is what you're describing are the friend for life type people that you may ebb and flow, you may move, you may whatever, but you can get right back with them and pick right back up. They're just they're just soulmates in that way. And then there's people that come into your life for a reason. I mean, they really are there to show you something, to teach you something, to help you at that part of your journey. But that's it. That's what it was. And you might see them again, or whatever, and you're friendly and you catch up. But you're not in just close proximity relationally. And then people for a season that just you worked with them, or you were together with them when you moved to that city or whatever. And it's okay. I think to your point, Suzanne, like I think struggle sometimes and maybe feel a false sense of guilt that I'm not as close to that person as I used to be. But the truth is that scripturally, we see all 3 of those relationships, lifelong, seasonal, and for reasons. And there's not a morality to it.
Good.
Right. I think that's really important, that it's not about it's right or wrong. It's just the season. I mean, I think
Just the
about
season.
David and Jonathan, the friendship that was there, and it was rich and deep. And
Yes.
but then there are friendships that do really come in and minister or
Yes.
like help in a season.
Totally. I think about Priscilla and Aquila with that one. They came into Paul's life for a season. They met in Corinth because they were kicked out of Rome, all these crazy circumstances. But at the end of Romans, which we're studying right now, Priscilla and Aquila are back in Rome, and Paul mentions them in chapter 16. Say hello to my friends. They're not in the same city.
Cool.
They're still doing ministry in different places. We don't know if they ever saw each other again, but he's thinking of them. And they were dear friends for that season. And they're still in relationship, but they're not journeying together in the same way.
I think I really think there's something to this, that we kind of say that things come to an end, and we put a negative on end.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should put negatives on end. I think ends can be celebrated, and seasons that should be celebrated when they come to an end
Yes.
in a way that says, hey, this is where we are. It's okay.
Yes.
It's good. This is, if this is God's obedience to move forward in a different direction, like it's celebration of the end.
Yeah.
To me is something that I think we miss a lot, but I think it's really important.
I do too. And maybe just, if nothing else, these categories can be helpful. Not that you want to go up to someone and say, hey, I think, we were friends for a
Here's the
season and the
reason.
season's over. But
I'm breaking up
I'm
with
breaking
you.
up with you.
Break up.
But I think you can name like, man, we had a great season together
Yeah.
and I'm still your friend. But just acknowledge that we don't work together anymore. The project ended or we moved and it's okay, because it allows for other relationships to come in. I would just say like on the intimacy thing of like, Holy of Holies and inner circle, outer courts, all with the temple. I think one of the biggest relational mistakes that we make in all this is that we share holy of holy things or holy things with outer court friends, or people that really, to be truthful, can't handle that or can't bear the weight of it. And then we get super hurt and disappointed, or vice versa. We're not sharing the things that we should be sharing with our core 3 or our core 4 or 5 people that need to know these things. And so we're saying like things out here in platitudes and trying to be vulnerable and transparent, but no one really knows us. And so I just think like just knowing like what I can share with what people, and I think we have such a value culturally of transparency. I just want people to be authentic and transparent. And there's a way to be authentic without saying everything. So I just have to remember that. I have to remind our kids that of like, you can be honest and tell the truth without saying everything.
That's a really hard lesson for kids to learn. I think it's a hard lesson for us to learn as people. Yeah.
And we just get hurt when we share probably you share a holy of holies thing, like something between you and God, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 other people, and you post it somewhere. And then people start ripping it or start saying stuff, and you go, this was such a holy, sacred thing to me, and I'm so wounded but you put a proverbial pearl before, people that couldn't handle that, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, I keep sorry, I feel like I'm just like processing this. This is really good. But my brain works like, you've talked about, like I'm black, white, right, wrong, and so when things end, it's not bad. But I do think there's a grief there, and like when
absolutely.
a season ends and the reason that a friend's in your life, it ends, and that's sad. And so I think in the past I've been like, I feel sad about this thing. It must be like, I got to hold on to it, it's, and so I've learned to be like, I can grieve this thing and it's still okay to like, let it go, or like the season's over. So I think acknowledging like there's a grief there, in some ways.
Yes.
And that's a good thing.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I don't want to diminish
Yeah.
because I do think culturally we do not grieve well. So I want there to be grief for the end of a season.
Yep.
In the last 2 years, I went through the end of a very long season and lots of change. And there was a period of great grief. But at the same time, a great celebration. Like it's the tension between the two. It's the train tracks of joy and pain that go in grief. And so things come to an end, and there's joy, but there's pain, and because things change. And so when that change comes, it's not easy. And I think those two train tracks of life are in every part of it. Ann Voskamp calls it the duplex of joy and pain and grief. And I think they live together. And I think they live together in community. And I don't know that we give space for those. And I think that's really important when you're walking through ends of seasons, new things, end of friendships, because they do sometimes come to an end. The other thing that comes to mind when we're talking about this is Tim Keller talks about forgiveness as a continual habitual practice. And I think when you're in community, that's one of the things that's just this core of it's a continual habitual practice to walk in forgiveness with one another and go, I shouldn't have shared that.
Yes.
Or I wish you would have, like just walking through the practice of it.
And learning from that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
That's good.
again, like there are some people who can hold those things.
Yeah.
I mean, like hold the information, but
Right.
also, hold it spiritually, like can contain those things. And others that they're just not at a place to do that. And it's not actually fair to burden them with that, but you need some people who can do that.
Right.
And obviously like that begins your relationship with the Lord. And I've said this very openly from up front, but I think, for me personally, like we'll pay really good money for wisdom and anonymity and confidentiality in the form of a counselor or spiritual director and someone to help me with that. and then, a core group of friends that have over time demonstrated that they can contain the things that I'm sharing with them, and vice versa.
Yes.
Hopefully I can do that with them.
Yep.
But again, I just think a lot of hurt and misunderstanding comes when you don't have, your friends slotted in the right places. I don't mean you have a whiteboard at home, but just
that's really
that
good.
you know, like, hey, this is a really life-giving relationship both ways. And this is a safe place to belong and to share.
Really good.
And that way you can have literally hundreds of contacts of friends.
Yeah.
And then, just keep kind of, think about Jesus, just kind of, he had the masses, and then 12, and then 3, and then his Father,
Yeah,
and just layers of relationships. And I think about Proverbs 4:23 that says, above all things, guard your heart, because it's a wellspring of life. And so I do think friendships and community,
Amen.
there's a proper guarding there of just the layers of intimacy. It's hard. It's a hard thing to learn.
Yeah.
It does not come easy.
No.
And I think that's where I go, the need of the practice of forgiveness, because I'm not going to get it right every time. And learning it in a new community, figuring out who the new people are, when people come into new city and they're looking to find community, giving themselves the space and time to get to that place.
Yes. And you don't need, by the way, many.
Yes.
I mean, you need 1 to 3 close friends.
That's great.
I think it's wonderful to have 10, 15, 20 friends to be with and, go have fun with, but you need 1 to 3 close friends.
It's so true.
Too tired to have too many friends.
It's too much. It's too much.
What would you say to somebody who's intimidated to find a friend to share? What encouragement would you give to them?
Yeah. I think my first encouragement would be to maybe pursue some work, with someone, meaning like a counselor or therapist on friendship, because there might be something there that, oftentimes those things are an indicator of there's a woundedness, with another friend or a parent that is going to keep you from having close relationships. So, take it, I would say in a weird way or a hard way, it might be, pay attention to the tension in that. And it might be time to sit down with someone for a few months and just process intimacy and understanding friendship. So that, that might apply to some, it might not apply to others. I think, it always takes courage to step into any kind of relationship, and the reality is you can't find your 1 to 3 until you find 15 to 20. Because you've got to be, and maybe more, 30, 40, 50 people that you're in proximity with, to where those things, those relationships start, popping to the surface. And you're probably not going to, connect on an event or whatever and find your best friend for life.
Right.
But if you think about where you met the close people in your life, you just had to put yourself in proximity. So I know it's hard, but I think the biggest encouragement I would give would, whether it's serving, going on a trip, jumping in a group, serving on a team, in the context of our church, getting into a league or, going and doing something in the community, like just finding a place where people are, because it's you've got to get in proximity of people.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love the courage. And one of the things that we pray with and the hospitality team at South Park is praying for fresh courage for people that are coming in new, that God will give them the fresh courage to actually come in and engage.
Yes.
And I think that's part of this process too. So
For sure.
Absolutely. When you're pursuing community and you are struggling, and we've talked about going to counseling, we've talked about looking at ourselves. Is there anything else that we would add to that to say to folks just to try, to get to help them?
Well, I would say, I love what Henry Cloud says about just different types of friends and relationships, and remembering that, and this might answer part of your question, maybe not all of it, but that there are wise people, there are foolish people, and there are evil people. And I'm going somewhere with this, with your question, because I think a lot of times we confuse people that hurt us in relationship or community, and we're like, they're bad people, they're evil people, and they're not. They're just foolish, and they're foolish when it comes to relationship. And the truth is that I've been foolish many times in relationships where I said something I shouldn't have said. I didn't pay attention to a friend the way I needed to. And I think all those things, to your question, like add up, and we bring wounds to new relationships, and we think, I'm going to get hurt the same way. I'm going to share something vulnerable. I'm going to get laughed at. Someone's going to, I remember one time someone was sharing with me, and I picked up my phone and started answering something and realized halfway through them sharing with me, they're bearing their soul, and I'm answering a text message. And we've all been there, but I can't imagine what they were feeling in the moment of what it took for them to share that. And I wasn't respecting that. And I'm just saying all that to say, we have to be in a perpetual state of forgiveness with people, but we also have to learn from people. And we talked about this earlier today of, patterns and problems, in relationships with friends. And everybody's gonna have a bad hair day. Everybody's gonna pick up their phone to text sometime when you're bearing your soul. It's just gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
But if it's a pattern, where this person doesn't listen to me, they don't pay attention to me. I don't like the way I feel when I'm around them. I don't like the things that I say and do when I'm around them. Then those are things to really pay attention to, where you might be friends with a fool. And, no offense to anybody, but like, I don't want a fool in my Holy of Holies. I don't want them in that circle. I don't mind them being in my relational world and having fun with them and being in a relationship with them, but I have to be able to slot them in the right place, And so I think just something I would add to that would just be to think about that and pray about that when you're in relationship with people, that first of all, don't go to it so quick to this is a person that's doing evil, or they're an evil, terrible person. They're probably not. They're probably super foolish in the relationship, and you might be playing a part in that too. And part of it is you've invited someone into the Holy of Holies or into the temple that doesn't belong in there. And the truth is that they're taking up a seat from someone who does. Because you mentioned it, in passing, but we only have so much relational bandwidth. And so it's not that you want to kick people out of your relational world, but they may not be in the right spot in relationship on the journey.
And just a comment there, like when you talk about the Holy of Holies, those people, they're close to you. They're, you've been vulnerable with them. I'm just grateful for the people in my Holy of Holies who have told me hard things, and they've been able to look at me and say, hey, you have a pattern in your life that's unhealthy. You have behavior in your life that's leading you down this road that's not good. And they've, there's safety and trust there that I mean, at first I'm offended, obviously, or sometimes, and it hurts to hear, but then I'm like, all right, like you're a person that's earned that voice in my life, and I want to listen because you know me. And, and that is like the thing I'm like most grateful for that, core four, that are like those people that are going to say, I had to say a hard thing to you.
Which is the sign, by the way, of that they belong in that circle. Because if you're just with people that they vote the same way as you, they pull for all the same teams, they never give you a hard word, then you've just created a community of yourself. And that's not real community. And so, I think paying attention to, the proverb is, faithful are the wounds of a friend than the kisses, more than the kisses of an enemy. So even though it's like, it stings, but it's for your good.
It's good.
There is a purpose in all of it. And it's really important.
It's good.
So thanks for doing this with us, having this conversation.
I could talk for another hour.
I know, we could keep going.
So good.
It's a great, I just want to encourage everyone, watching, just that community is worth it. I think all of us would say that. It's probably one of the hardest things, but it is how God designed us. And I think there's a whole part of our journey, to use that word, with Jesus, that we can't fully understand and grow in unless we're with people. And that's why God made the church. And as imperfect as any church is, it's full of God's people, and we're meant to be in community with them. But we have to be wise about those circles and what circle, we're traveling in, and is this a friend for a reason, a season, or for life? And just, I think that's helpful language, and helping to navigate the relational world.
It's really good. Thank you for that.
Thank you
for this
guys.
time. Will you pray for us before we end?
I'd love to. Lord, thank you for my friends. Thank you for this community that we get to be a part of and journey with. And I want to pray for everyone who is listening, who's watching today, Lord, that you would give us discernment. That's really the word, an awareness of your presence, and awareness of your activity as it relates to relationships and community. And I do pray that each of us would know the joy of a friend, a true friend that can see us and know us, correct us, speak life, And Lord, help us to be that for someone else. Help us to show up in that way for someone else. And I pray for the person today that is lonely, that might be discouraged when it comes to a relationship or community, that's feeling overwhelmed or intimidated. Lord, I pray that you would give them the courage and the faithfulness needed to pursue relationships, and that you would provide the friendships and community that each of us were made for. And I pray that in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks for joining us,
you,
Chris.
guys.
Thank you guys for listening. Find us where you find your favorite podcast.